When playing games, I generally like to try out the side content outside the main story. It's fun to see the variety of things a game has to offer and get more of the world and story. Plus, sometimes the most fun parts are the side quests. I rarely ever try and do absolutely everything though, and usually I don't 100% games. Seeing as I have limited time to play and have kind of a big backlog, I generally move on to the next single-player game I want to play after seeing the credits. Some games, like the Legend of Zelda series, I'll try and do most of the side content before finishing up the story. Others, like 2018's God of War, I'll mostly just focus on the story and barely touch any of the side quests. I anticipated on doing the same when I started Ragnarok. But yeah, that didn't go to plan. The game took me 43 hours and 3 minutes to complete the story while doing lots of side quests, and then almost 7 more hours to finish it all up, leading me to a final time of 49 hours and 55 minutes. I don't go for platinum trophies often in games, but I do think it's fun to do here and there. For those who aren't familiar, PlayStation games will give you trophies for doing a wide range of things and challenges in a game, and if you do them all, you get a platinum trophy. Before playing Ragnarok, I had gotten 7 platinum trophies for 6 different games over the years. There's several more I got close, but I either had some trophies I didn't feel like going for, or I just have to replay the game again to get it. I would try and go for them more often, but my backlog tends to dissuade me out of it. So a game has to make it seem like it is possible for me to achieve it in a reasonable amount of time, without it being too challenging or having to do anything too wacky and out of the way. Plus, I have to enjoy playing the game too, which was definitely the case for God of War Ragnarok. The combat style from the 2018 God of War returns, and it again feels great, and it's definitely fun using all of Kratos' weapons and abilities. The boss fights are grand and super intense in this game too, and definitely always were a highlight. My memory is a bit dodgy on the previous game, so it took me a little to get readjusted to the gameplay, and I can't make any comments on the changes made, but I was quickly able to get back into the groove. The axe is yet again very satisfying to throw and to call back, and it definitely feels like you're packing a punch with every hit. And in this one, you get the Blades of Chaos very early in the game as well, which definitely provides you with a very different style of fighting. It's much faster, and I like to use it when facing a group of enemies at once, but it's lacking in the range attacks you can do with the axe. The difference between the weapons made it feel natural for me to switch between them depending on the scenario. Before moving on, I probably should give a little spoiler warning, as I will show and talk about some gameplay elements that are introduced as you progress that I personally didn't know about when starting. I won't talk about any of the major story spoilers like Kratos, I am your father type of stuff, but some gameplay from mid to late game will be shown. So, if you're like me, and know you want to play and rather not see too much beforehand, you may want to save this video for later. About halfway through the game, you are given a third weapon to add to your arsenal, the Drop Near Spear, and it definitely changed the combat loop for me and became my primary weapon. It's faster than the axe, but also provides you with the ranged throwing attacks you can't do with the blades. I still would use all 3 weapons depending on the scenario, but the spear definitely became my most comfortable weapon, and was my go-to for boss fights and when things got tough. The game definitely encourages you to switch between weapons too, as certain enemies and boss fights have health bars that make them weak to particular weapons and resistant to others. Plus, some puzzles ask for you to use a particular weapon too, so even if you have a favorite, all the weapons get their time to shine. Speaking of puzzles, while they certainly aren't the main draw, I do enjoy that they do spread them out throughout the game. It was certainly fun to think differently in how to use your weapons and other mechanics outside of combat. However, like many others, I definitely experienced the overly eager tips your allies give, often before I was even aware a puzzle was around.
Think you can uncover that geyser from here?
I am cool with the game giving me tips, and it definitely helped me in some scenarios, but sometimes it felt like the game was rushing you to figure it out. Also, some of the runic spell puzzles felt a little clunky and thus annoying to finish at times, but other runic puzzles were the most fun, so it was a weird mix. Overall, I felt they were a nice change of pace, and do certainly get the gears in my head turning at times. Like its predecessor, I really enjoyed the story in this game, and it did a great job of hooking me in. It picks up a few years after, during Fimbulwinter, and Atreus is now a teenager, and with that comes new parental challenges Kratos has to face. They both need to grow to overcome the challenges that await them as the prophesized war and the end of the world seems to inevitably approach. Seeing as I played the previous one back in 2019, I'm glad the game gave me an option to recap the story in the beginning. The game also organically brings up previous plot points throughout the game as the characters talk to one another, which I appreciated. Although, I can imagine that could potentially be annoying if you just played the games back to back. My main critique for the story was they tried to cram a lot into this game. Certain new characters didn't get much time to be developed, and thus their big moments didn't entirely land for me. Other new characters were great though, and I particularly thought a couple of the villains were well written. The ending, however, did feel a bit rushed too, and I wish it lasted a little longer to add to the scope of it, as certain events didn't get the payoff I was hoping for. Overall, I was definitely satisfied with the story in the grand scheme though, and it's definitely stuck with me afterwards. The game also changes up the pace by allowing you to play segments as Atreus this time on his own. He plays way differently than Kratos does, as he very much relies on his ranged attacks with his bow and abilities. Although he does have melee options as well. He admittedly doesn't have as much depth as Kratos, as he only has one weapon and for some reason only one finishing move for all enemies. So he isn't as exciting to play as. Usually his segments aren't too long though, so it doesn't get stale. Plus the side characters and story elements of his adventures are more the point of interest. Playing as Atreus allows us to see aspects of the world you wouldn't be able to as Kratos, and his differences definitely lead to some funny occasions. Plus, I notice he uses the same attacks you unlock with him when he is the side character too, which is a nice detail. Because Atreus is often off on his own adventures, this game has a variety of other sidekicks that follow along with you on your journey for both characters. They all have their slight differences, and it's fun to see what each of them do, and it definitely changes up the gameplay throughout the game. Most of them only assist you once or twice, but it was a really cool way to spice things up. I love that they were able to continue the cinematic vision from the last one and make everything flow as if it's one shot again, even with all the jumping around the game does between characters and realms. Which, unlike the previous one, you visit all 9 realms and see the entire variety and scope of the world. It was cool to see the new rooms, as well as revisit the ones from the previous game, and see how they've changed over the years between. The one-shot nature and the giant scope of the journey really makes it feel like an epic mythical tale the game aims to be. I admittedly have never played any of the God of Wars before the 2018 one, but I know the series was known for its brutal violence. Like its predecessor, there are definitely moments in Ragnarok that make me wince a little, but I think the game does a nice job of providing some brutality to keep the spirits of the original, while also not glorifying it too much. The game certainly has a theme of characters struggling with both its thirst for vengeance and trying to figure out when violence is necessary or not, and I enjoyed seeing how Kratos, whose past is full of violence and vengeance, tries to help the others as he himself fights his own nature. Even though I enjoyed all of that, if it weren't for the quality of the side quest, I probably wouldn't have attempted to platinum the game. As I mentioned, I intended to mostly focus on the main story and not much else, but when the first side quest popped up, I wanted to give it a peek and see how they were, which that then led me down the rabbit hole. I think what really drew me in was seeing that the side quests actually had an impact on the world and or the gameplay that would even last after the quest. There was a lot of big character moments in these side quests too that definitely were heartwarming and made me more attached to them. The game has gaps in the story too, where it's encouraged to go off and do the side quests, so they feel natural to do, and not like you're neglecting the urgency of the story by partaking in them. This certainly made me want to partake in all the quests to experience the story in full, and it definitely made me sort of regret not trying to do more of the side content in the previous game. So, if I ever play it again, I'll definitely give those a whirl. Going for the platinum wasn't all easy though. The amount of challenge you have is mostly your choice, as Ragnarok does offer a multitude of difficulty options, which allows for people to play how they desire without feeling like the game is either too easy or too hard. I played through the game on the Give Me Balanced difficulty, which is essentially the normal difficulty, which I generally aim for since I like having a little challenge but not be destroyed. While the main story was fair in difficulty and I could get past it without a lot of struggle, I still had moments where I'd die.
Oh no, Atreus!
Oh, it's a fighting mess. Come on, get up, brother.
The side content definitely bumps up the difficulty a bit though, and definitely contributed to more of my deaths.
Get up, brother. Brother, get up. Scared?
I definitely enjoyed the challenge they provided at first, but once I was in the postgame, the difficulty of some of the bosses really began to kick me in the face. So I may have had to make some adjustments since I didn't want to spend days on a couple of fights. The Crucible, while having a lot of fun parts, also was a bit annoying to grind since you had to repeat the same challenges over and over to unlock new ones. But none of that deterred me from trying to do it all though, and it was nice to finally hear that when I got the Platinum. So, overall, I really enjoyed the game and was glad to have played it. If you enjoy action games and a well-written story, I think this is definitely a game you should consider. I definitely recommend that you play 2018's God of War first before playing Ragnarok, as this one is very much a sequel and the stories are super interconnected. It was definitely great to see Kratos and Atreus' journey between these two games, and they've made me interested in both checking out the original trilogy someday, and excited to see what spin-offs and or sequels they'll have in the future. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I definitely have a lot of fun making these, and I'm excited to show you my completions coming up, in addition to the games I'm currently playing. So, if you're interested in seeing more, definitely smash that subscribe button, and I'll be seeing more of you soon.